From the basement of La Penta, it's WICR.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sports Vault. I'm your host with the most, Jersey Joe Archino. And after a phenomenal weekend in sports, we've got another one coming up. It's time. I mean, what a better way to start off your week than with the Sports Vault, breaking down everything that we saw happen this weekend. Obviously, you've got to kick it off with the NBA. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I'm kind of obsessed with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And look, they sweep the Celtics, and it's really cool because one of those little things that I just love is LeBron's teams have swept their opponents, their first-round opponents, in the playoffs the last three seasons. 2012, you had the Bucks. 2013, you had the Bucks. 2014, you had the Bobcats. And this year you had the Celtics. But obviously last night in Game 4 was a very, very difficult game, I would say. I mean, look, Cleveland was in full control of this game, had gigantic leads at points, but it really came very down to the wire at the end of the game. I think one of the things for that was the officiating. I thought the officiating was awful. They missed big time plays at the end of the game. They let the game get really out of control. And obviously one of the big things everyone's talking about this morning is Kevin Love after he dislocated his shoulder. Now, right now it seems like he's going to be out for 2 weeks, and he might miss the first two games of the Bulls and the in the Cavs series. Again, the Bulls are still in their series with Milwaukee, but they're up 3-1. I think we all expect that maybe the Bucks pull off another win here, but I think for the most part we all pretty much expect and aren't going to expect anything less than the Bulls to move on. So right now, as a Cavs fan, I just want the Bucks to kind of delay the inevitable for a little bit longer to give Kevin Love a little bit more time to get ready, because for all the crow he's gotten for the way that he's played and he's struggled to fit in, he is a very important piece of this team, and you've seen he's played very well in this Boston series, hitting timely shots, doing a lot of big things for them. So his loss, again, and Chicago has a ton of size. It's not just size, it's depth in the size. I mean, they have Nikola Mirotic, they have Taj Gibson, Noah, Pau Gasol's leading the league in double-doubles this year. They have so much depth around that size. And look, Cleveland certainly has that working for them too. Timothy Mozgov, you saw it yesterday. Guy's a monster. Timothy Mozgov is really one of the pieces that changed the Cavs season when they acquired him. They had no rim protector before him. Even Varejao, I mean, his injury, he still wasn't a really consistent defensive rim protector. Timothy Mozgov is money in that regard. And Kyrie Irving, look, I mean, if anybody in this season has shown you the improvement in their game and what they are now, it's Kyrie Irving. He's had as much a jump in his game as anybody, affecting the game everyone. You just watch that game where it could have really swung in the Celtics' favor many times. The momentum really started to build in their favor. Kyrie hits difficult, timely shots time and time again. Kyrie's just been a money player all year. The improvement in his game has been tremendous. Can't get enough enjoyment out of watching him play. But again, at the end of the day, all that I'm still taking away from this series is the Cavs had to work for everything they were given, and it's a very good start to their playoff run because Boston is one of those teams where you look at them and you say, you're never worried that the Cavs aren't going to get it done, but at the same time, you know the Cavs aren't going to get handed anything easy. They're really going to have to work, and it's a good test for your first-round opponent. But Kevin Love is still the priority, and I look at him, and I do think it was a dirty play. When I first watched it initially, I thought a little bit I didn't make too much of it. Still thought something looked a little fishy. Then when I watched the play over and over again with Olynyk, I don't think there's any question it was a dirty play by Olynyk. He can say whatever he wants to. His teammates will defend him. I think Kevin Love is totally right. When you just look at that play, the way that Olynyk has Love's arm wrapped around, and after the ball, the way he continues to pull on his arm, unacceptable. It's a Bush League move. It drives me crazy because I just think there's no room for that. And Olynyk, the way that things went there, the way that the officials went about that game after that. Now, you knew the game was going to get chippy after that. Now, Kendrick Perkins, we kind of all saw what happened with him and Crowder. I thought Kendrick Perkins should have been ejected. I mean, the way things happened there, he absolutely should have been. I was actually surprised. And J.R. Smith getting ejected. Now, I thought Smith again, he did throw that elbow in there, but I didn't think that that was more egregious than the Perkins thing. I thought Smith should not have been ejected. Perkins should have been ejected. It just overall was a very poorly officiated game, and a lot of the reasons why that game started to get a little out of hand was because of the poor officiating. But that crew did a really bad job. LeBron towards the end, you saw on the inbounds play with Isaiah Thomas where Isaiah was behind him and he got fouled, where somehow he was behind LeBron James inbounding the ball. Ridiculous. The fact that nobody was watching that play was just, it's unacceptable, really. But for the most part, the officiating was unacceptable. I thought Olynyk, the play was definitely dirty. I think if you just watch it a couple times, you'll just see there's no reason for that. It's a dirty play. He should be fined by the league. I think it's a no-brainer, honestly, what happened there. And now the Cavs are in a tough spot because Kevin Love, a big part, and it's funny too because it's kind of, again, there's so many parallels between LeBron's Heat run and his Cavs run this year. And we did see the first year that they won their championship, Chris Bosh, he got hurt in the Indiana series, and he came back for the Boston series and was just tremendous for them. Was probably the main reason they beat Boston and got to the NBA Finals. We'll see now with Kevin Love. I mean, look, he is a crucial part of this team right now. He struggled during the year, but right now they need him, and they're going to really need him for the Chicago series because I think once they get past Chicago, it gets a little bit more manageable getting to the NBA Finals because if it was Washington or if it was Atlanta, I wouldn't really fear those two as much as I do Chicago. I think Chicago, this is essentially the Eastern Conference Finals this next round. So the plan for the Cavs, I think, is you got to hope the Bucks pull out one more win and make that series go a little bit longer, and then you just got to hope for the best with Kevin Love. But, I mean, you have some pieces. It's possible to still beat Chicago. I think even with Kevin Love, we're looking at a 6-7 game series. But I think at the end of the day, you just want the guy to get there a little bit quick, and you just need the Bucks to pull one more out, maybe even two more. But right now, don't be greedy. Just want one more. And then when you look at the rest of the NBA playoff standings so far, I mean, for the most part, really only the Spurs and the Clippers series is competitive. 2-2, I think honestly that's probably going to be a 7-game series. I mean, I thought game 2 for the Spurs was the game changer. I thought that them getting that win and winning it the way that they did, even though down the stretch they did struggle and they did have big players out, I still think that that was huge for them, and that really shifted the balance of this series. Now again, I never panic when it's the Spurs. I know last night was not the best performance. LA really showed up big time. Blake Griffin was terrific. But at the end of the day, nobody adjusts and bounces back better than the Spurs. I do think that they bounce back and get the next one. And who knows what's going to happen the rest of the way. But again, I'm not a man who ever doubts the Spurs, especially when it comes to the playoffs. Now, point guard is certainly something to worry about with Tony Parker and how he's been up in the air a little bit. But still, at the end of the day, I think that they're so fundamentally sound. They know how they want to play. They make adjustments so well. I'm not going to be surprised at all when we see them bounce back in the next game. But again, this is definitely the most competitive series. You really get your bang for your buck here. And then Washington and Toronto. Now, Washington, there's no word you can really use aside from they just annihilated Toronto in this series. It was really, aside from the first game when the series when it went into overtime, it was not really even competitive at all. But for the most part, I think it shows you the growth in Washington that you wanted to see. The difference between these two, I think we really looked at these two and we thought this is a very competitive, balanced series. Both teams very young, very similar in the fact that they're built around that point guard, that shooting guard combination. But I think John Wall and Bradley Beal are certainly showed you that they've taken the next step in their game now. The next series, I think if it is Atlanta, I think they have a really good shot. I really do. I think that starting five could not be stopped against Toronto. Now, Toronto, in the other sense, I think there's certainly a lot more questions about their ability to be anything more than what they are. Is this really roster ever going to be anything more than getting to the playoffs, being that first-round team, and just always getting bounced out? I think, honestly, that's really what I see out of them. I mean, Kyle Lowry is a very good point guard. They have nice role players like, I don't know, maybe a notch above role players like DeRozan and guys like that. But I think for the most part, this roster is really never going to be an NBA championship caliber one. Just one of those teams that's always going to get to the playoffs, be that first round team. And let's be honest, in the NBA, unless if you are stuck in that position, that's a terrible spot to be in because we see it so many times. There's those teams who are kind of around that bubble and they're really never in any shape to win a championship, but they're still making the playoffs, and it's kind of a tough spot to be in. I think that's where the Raptors are. Certainly a lot more questions for them moving forward. But I think for Washington, it's that growth in that jump you wanted to see. I think from a maturity standpoint, just from a taking command of your team standpoint, I think John Wall and Bradley Beal have certainly taken that next step. John Wall especially, I mean, he's had a stellar season. I mean, just as a floor general, doing what he needs to, understanding the flow of the game. I've been as impressed with John Wall as anybody this year. I thought that he played tremendous in this series. You got the timely shots from Paul Pierce, and look, that's why they brought him in. I think Brooklyn definitely did not have the right role in mind. I think they still expected the old Paul Pierce when clearly he's aging. That wasn't him anymore. I think he's certainly been money for Washington. And look, they took care of business right away. I think Brooklyn might sneak out another win against Atlanta and kind of delay that series. But I think Washington's got a great shot against Atlanta. Again, Atlanta does not have those definable stars. I think John Wall is certainly a star in his regard. Bradley Beal is kind of on the cusp of being a star. And look, you have a great starting five. You have size. You have so much depth in that starting five. I mean, Gortat, you have Nene. Paul Pierce brings you that veteran swingman guy. And then Bradley Beal and John Wall are the 1-2 combo punch. It's a great starting five. I think they got a really good shot. Dallas and Houston. Dallas played a great game last night. They really did. Definitely the performance you've been waiting for. I thought they really controlled the tempo of that game. Really, even when Houston started making little runs here and there, for the most part, Dallas was able to sustain them and regain the momentum. Again, Houston, they're up 3-1. They're going to get out of this series, but I still think Dallas is going to make they fight, and that's all you can give to them. I mean, Rondo, for all the distractions and the injuries that they've had with Richard Jefferson, Chandler Parsons, the mess that Rondo is, I think for the most part, there's still that fight there, and that's what you expect. I mean, look, Dirk Nowitzki is a class guy. He's a veteran guy, and you expect nothing less from him, and you give them credit because they did play a really good game there. But then, for the most part in the NBA playoffs, I don't think there's been a ton of surprises for the most part. I think maybe we expected more competitive games, but at the same time, the winners are who we expected. I certainly expected Golden State to run over New Orleans. I really didn't think that there would be any kind of competition there. I love Anthony Davis. The guy's tremendous, but I just don't think Golden State's so hard to match offensively in the tempo and the pace that they play at. There's really not another team in the NBA who could play from behind as quickly and be as competitive as Golden State is when they're behind. Because when they're behind, the speed they play at, the way that they can just knock down shots, even when Curry and Clay start to get off to a rough start, the way that they can just bounce back because of how good they are shooting the basketball is just incredible. And they're never out of a game. Even when they're down 10, they're never out of it. It doesn't matter really what the lead is, as we saw a couple nights ago when the Pelicans were up by like 20. When Stephen Curry heats it up, when Klay Thompson, they're always going to find space. They're going to get their shots eventually. I think they're always in position. And then finally, the one that this is probably my most surprising. Now, I still picked Memphis to beat Portland, but I definitely did not think it was going to be as one-sided as it has been. I mean, these games, honestly, haven't been competitive at all. It's kind of like last year where Portland had their coming-out party. They beat Houston in that series, and they were terrific. And then in that next series against San Antonio, they just really got blown out in every single game. This kind of looks a lot like it. And Mike Conley going to have facial surgery, and he's certainly one of the most important parts of this team. In Memphis, when you look at them, I mean, their offense is really built around three guys. it's Randolph, it's Gasol, and it's Mike Conley, and they've just dominated every phase of Portland. Now Portland doesn't have has a lot of situations going on their hands. I mean, no Wesley Matthews certainly hurts. Aaron Aflalo's up and down status has certainly hurt them, and LaMarcus Aldridge is not at 100% with that finger injury, but still, I definitely did not expect this to be as one-sided as it is, and honestly, I don't know if Portland's even going to win another game just because in a series against Memphis, it is so grueling physically. They're so big and they wear you down so much defensively that when you've been beaten down as heavily and as one-sided as Portland has been, I really think that they're just kind of they don't have the energy left. And it's the reason why Memphis is so difficult to play because when you play them in a 7-game series, just when you start to get down, you expend so much energy. I even think the team that plays Memphis in the next round is going to lose a little step because of how grueling that series is going to be because I don't know if Golden State would have as much of a problem because they play so fast that I think that they could counter that and that really is the way you beat Memphis. I think it's you can't slow things down. You've got to be very fast. Your pace has got to be very quick, and if you do have that quick pace like the Warriors do, I don't think you'll have as much of a problem against Memphis because part of the reason how they can physically wear you down is by being slow and banging you around the paint with all their defenders. I think that is a big key there. But for the most part, it's been a lot of fun. I think these next round matchups are going to be really cool. Cleveland, Chicago is going to be great. Golden State and Memphis is going to be great. There's going to be a lot of nice matchups, and we'll continue to see this LA-San Antonio series because, look, we're looking at, I think, a 7-game series. A lot more things are going to come up. Big games tonight, though. Certainly we'll be monitoring those on Twitter. If you want to get my take, go to @SportsVaultIona. But I will be back on later in the day. Everyone, thank you for listening to me for your morning commute, and definitely enjoy your morning.